Hi, welcome to Why America? I'm Leeja Miller. Graham Plattner, Democratic hopeful to replace Republican Susan Collins as senator for Maine, has had a rough couple weeks. The oyster farmer, former Marine from Maine running as a progressive everyman, is being asked to answer for some problematic shit that's been dug up from his, frankly, not-so-distant past. Today, we're talking about what Plattner's controversies and the reaction to them, plus the soaring popularity of Zohran Mamdani and the promise of progressive voices, can teach us about the future of politics, how we hold politicians accountable, and how we get out of this mess. Will progressive politicians save us? Thank you to my partner on today's video, PDS Debt. Credit card debt sucks. I've struggled with it. I know how stressful and overwhelming it can feel to watch those debts pile up. And it's so hard to live your life under the constant strain of worrying about credit card debt on top of, literally everything else going on right now. And of course, it's the credit card companies that win when you have to keep paying them huge amounts of interest every month. It can feel so good to finally take back control of your life by tackling those big, scary debts, especially if you can get a little help along the way. If you're struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills, you need to check out PDS Debt. PDS Debt provides a service to match you with debt solutions tailored to your financial situation, and they have a team of people ready to help you with your debt journey. They understand your specific scenario and will help provide alternative solutions to becoming debt-free. PDS Debt is offering a free debt analysis. It only takes 30 seconds. Head over to pdsdebt.com/Miller to get your free debt assessment today. You'll receive a full breakdown on how to save on interest each month and the quickest way to take care of your debt. There's no minimum credit score required, whether your credit is bad or fair. They're here to help you save more, pay off your debt faster, and start putting money back where it belongs, in your savings account. PDS Debt is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, boasts hundreds of 5-star reviews on Google, and holds a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. And getting started is easy. Go to pdsdebt.com/Miller to complete your free debt assessment in just 30 seconds to see what options are available to you. Get your free assessment and find the best option for you right now at pdsdebt.com/Miller. Thanks, PDS Debt. Let's talk about Graham Plattner, the oyster farmer everyman from Maine who's largely won over progressives even outside of Maine, and who seemed like a real breath of fresh air, an actual Washington outsider who promises to come in and change things up. He's running to be the Democratic nominee to go toe-to-toe with longtime Republican Senator Susan Collins, whose seat is seen as vulnerable and who truly represents the Washington establishment after nearly 30 years holding on to the seat for dear life. The primary isn't until June of next year, but Plattner has created a lot of buzz already. For the last few weeks, the buzz has been not so great. First, it was revealed that he had made a large series of problematic posts, mostly on Reddit between 2012 and 2021. It's a veritable smorgasbord of un-PC things fit to offend truly every subsection of the American electorate. Misogynistic, racist, homophobic, socialist, ableist, anti-cop. There's something for everyone. Under the username 𝗵𝗔𝗔, he called himself a vegetable-growing, psychedelics-taking socialist, but still got the guns, though. I don't trust the fascists to act politely. Under a post about the police killing of 𝗗𝗜𝗓𝗏 after the cops claimed accidental discharge, but the body cam footage showed otherwise, he commented, "I knew there was no such thing as an accidental discharge by the end of range week at Parris Island. I was also a 19-year-old moron. Fuck these cops." Under a post titled, "White people aren't as racist or stupid as Trump thinks," he commented, "Living in white rural America, I'm afraid to tell you they actually are." When he didn't agree with posts, he seemed to have a habit of calling posters the R word. He used gay slurs and the word pussy pretty interchangeably as insults, and he questioned the validity of claims made by survivors of sexual assault in the military. And some of these posts are from a decade or more ago, but some are from 2021, when Plattner was the tender young age of 37. Then it was revealed that he had a whole-ass Nazi tattoo on his chest, which really drove home the questionable nature of his stances. That he could go for 18 years with a Totenkopf on his chest and not know it. Now listen, I have tattoos. I even have a skull tattoo. Skulls and crossbones, very popular subject matter for tattoos. So at first I was like, this is just a hit piece. It's like tons of people have skull and crossbones tattoos. But when you see it, and then you look at the Totenkopf adopted by SS officers, especially the ones that patrolled the concentration camps and was plastered all over Nazi imagery and uniforms. It's the same thing. The angle, the composition, the style, it's a Nazi symbol. Plattner has since explained that he got the tattoo back in 2007 on a drunken night in Croatia with other members of his unit, and that for the 18 years he's had it on his body, no one has mentioned anything. It was only just brought to his attention that this could be a hate symbol, and he just recently got it covered up in response to the controversy. But then more dirt came up indicating that he did, in fact, know exactly what it symbolized. One acquaintance from a decade ago, so take this with a grain of salt, said he referred to it as my Totenkopf. And his own campaign manager, who's since quit, said he admitted the tattoo could become problematic for his campaign, though his campaign has since denied the allegations that he knew that it was a Nazi symbol. Graham Plattner, for his part, has issued multiple videos and posts acknowledging the controversies. He has provided explanations and given background for what led to the tattoo and the comments and how he has grown since then.
I got out of the Army in 2012. I had PTSD. I had depression. I had all of the things that come with serving in a war, in 2 wars, that I eventually began to not believe in at all. It left me feeling very unmoored. It left me feeling very disillusioned, very alienated, and very isolated. And I think, like a lot of people, I went on the internet to post stupid things and get in fights and find some form of community in some way, some outlet for my feelings, for my rage, for my isolation. It wasn't until I found actual community that all went away. And the reason that I stopped posting on Reddit around 2020 and 2021 is because that was the point in my life where I had found this. I had moved back to my hometown. I'd found community. I'd started a business. I'd met someone to fall in love with. I'd been able to really begin to feel connected again. And not only did it let me feel connected, it also gave me a lot of hope. And so for those of you who have read these things and been offended, have read these things and seen someone that you don't recognize, I am deeply sorry. It's something that I see someone that I don't recognize either, not in who I am today. It is somebody that I do recognize though, somebody who is struggling, somebody who is having a very difficult time settling into a society that he felt betrayed by and left behind by after having to go fight in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm sorry for this. Just know that it's not reflective at all of who I am. I don't want you to judge me on the dumbest thing I ever wrote on the internet. I would prefer if people could judge me on the person I am today.
Commenters' reactions range from continued outrage, mockery, and acceptance. One commenter pointed out Republican hypocrisy. Isn't it wild that leadership in the young Republicans who are in their 20s and 30s get a hall pass from the VP for openly praising Hitler, but you have to apologize for being mad at the government who shipped you off to fight in a foreign war? Another commented, thanks for holding yourself accountable and explaining. We won't let hit pieces about years-old deleted Reddit posts distract us from the bigger picture. They're going to keep going for low blows, but keep it up. Another commented, Fetterman 2.0. Another commented, how old were you when you said sexual assault victims should take some responsibility? And someone with the screen name cigarette-flavored yogurt commented, go back to Reddit, bitch. Just to add context to the fact that we are dealing with a Twitter comment section here, making comments about a Reddit comment section. This timeline truly is the dumbest one available, yet we must persist and engage with it, so here I am. I am not interested in or willing to defend a politician, no matter how progressive, for saying abhorrent shit. So let me just put that out there right away. I know that I'm wading into fraught territory when weighing in on stuff like this, and I'm not interested in just hanging my hat on really any politician and saying that they're above reproach and should not be held accountable for their actions. Also, my legal training and my time experiencing firsthand our criminal justice system, on the legal side, not on the incarceration side, for clarity, has made me deeply passionate about redemption and rehabilitation. I think writing someone off as inherently bad for life and unredeemable isn't really productive. I think people deserve to grow and change and acknowledge their mistakes and move forward from them. That doesn't necessarily make them an ideal candidate for office, but that is the context from which I come at the idea of redemption generally. Our penal system is the antithesis to that, and we see how poorly it's working. And especially since the Me Too movement, we've seen a lot of public figures and politicians get called out for abhorrent behavior and do nothing but deny and double down or disappear for a few years and then come back into the limelight relatively unscathed. So I will absolutely give Plattner credit for the video he made addressing the accusations. He didn't deny, he didn't double down. Some people say he was just giving excuses. I'll meet him where he's at and say I believe him. The context is helpful to understand where he's coming from. And I think whether you like him or not, there are a lot of people in America who have had similar experiences to him. Angry white men who were shipped off to a pointless war and came back to find a country they no longer believed in, that no longer gave a shit about them. Whether you're talking about Vietnam War vets or veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, it's a sentiment that has plagued especially our service members, who must also then contend with the PTSD and other long-term side effects of engaging in pointless wars. I saw in him a person who is willing to learn and change their mind, and that is woefully lacking in this country right now. Here on this channel, in my comments section, in the discourse at large, we are often talking about how to talk to the other side and how to unbrainwash the masses to move away from complete democratic collapse and back to some semblance of dialogue and a functioning country. And yet I think we are also quick to see things in very black and white terms and fully denounce people who do exactly what we're asking them to do: reconsider their thinking and change their mind. If they're not allowed to move forward from that, then what's the point, you know? And that's all well and good, but then you have to ask the question, maybe he's allowed a redemption arc, but do we have to elect him to be a whole ass senator? There are tons of people who don't have Nazi tattoos and hateful Reddit comments from their past who have felt anger and disillusionment without being bigoted and weird about it online. It's a little shocking that there doesn't seem to be more of an established practice of vetting candidates thoroughly. If CNN could dig up these old posts and point out the Nazi symbolism in his tattoo, couldn't his campaign have also done so and decided, hey, maybe this isn't our guy, or at least gotten out ahead of it? Given the nature of the internet, most people under 50 have posted something dumb online at some point. Could we not just do a quick sift through to make sure that none of it was like openly racist or awful, you know? But then that also bears the question, if we are so desperate for candidates that represent the everyman or the will of the people or who are outside the Washington establishment, how much leeway should we give them for their imperfect pasts? It makes me think of the scene from Legally Blonde where Warner Huntington III tells Elle that if he wants to be a senator by the time he's 30, he needs to stop dicking around and marry a Jackie, not a Marilyn.
I need to stop dicking around.
I am so sick of the Warner Huntington IIIs of the world running our government. The ones who've clearly been groomed from a young age to become politicians, who speak like politicians, who have the resume of a politician, who have connections because they're probably also children of other politicians. Those are some of the only people who have been so conscious of everything they do that they've avoided doing anything that could possibly ruin their future chances at running for office. That's gross to me. It's giving plutocracy. It's giving oligarchy. That being said, even those people often do abhorrent shit and try to cover it up once they run for office, or they do abhorrent shit literally while in office and then lie about it or try to cover it up. 𝗓𝗓𝗡𝗏, at least to his credit, acknowledged what he did and apologized for it. There is more he could do. He could give to a nonprofit or two for the people impacted by his words. He could lay out a plan for how he will do better in the future. But it appears as though this is a guy capable of changing his mind and learning from his mistakes, and maybe those are good qualities to have in a politician. That is a decision only the people of Maine will be able to make. Similarly, Zohran Mamdani, the frontrunner of the New York City mayoral race and progressive favorite the world over, has had to answer for some of his previous online comments. He has walked back his comments about defunding the police. He has been taken to task over his use of the term globalize the Antifada, and when he walked back his statements that angered centrists and conservatives, that's angered his base of progressives. While I don't always endorse the reporting in The Daily, the New York Times podcast, they did a great interview with Mamdani a week or so ago that I found really enlightening. In it, Mamdani explained that walking back his language about defunding the police was a choice he made after meeting with a lot of different groups, including New York City police officers. And he determined that full defunding of the police wasn't the best way forward. He also agreed to move away from using the phrase globalize the Antifada after being told by various Jewish groups that the phrase is interpreted as anti-Semitic. That is, again, to me, evidence of someone who is speaking to many different people and learning how to do politics. And I think this gets at a very important point that I wanted to make in this episode that I'm hopeful can help us as we navigate our own reactions to politicians like 𝗓𝗓𝗡𝗏 and Zohran Mamdani, progressives who have said and done things we maybe don't agree with. Obviously, Plattner's past is much more egregious. I'm just comparing the two, as many others have done, because they are two new progressive voices in the country that are getting a lot of attention. The point is this: despite our very human tendency to think in black and white terms, politics actually doesn't lend itself very well to black and white thinking. And a way around this is to think about candidates and government and politics as navigating two issues at the same time. On the one hand, you have ideology and philosophy. What do you believe in and why? On the other hand, you have the logistical reality of the act of politicking, which requires strategy and compromise and is a game that you can never win, but that you must always be playing. And I think in the US, at least, we really get these two things conflated, especially on the left. You've got the armchair philosophers and the ideological purists who say, if you do not agree with me on every important issue that matters to me, then I will not vote for you, and I would rather vote for nobody than vote for someone who stands for something I don't agree with. And you also, in this camp, have the people who are always pushing for more and for better. Healthcare for all, free childcare and higher education, universal basic income, taxing the rich, getting money out of politics, moving more towards democratic socialism or full-blown socialism or whatever political philosophy it is that they believe in. Maybe they've studied the philosophers. They know their theory. They're completely dissatisfied with the status quo. And that's fine. That's great, in fact. Yes, even the armchair philosophers screaming in the comments section, I think this is all essential to society and to politics. People need to be engaging and thinking and arguing because this is shit that AI can't do. I mean, it can. I've seen the videos where they pit AI against each other in a creepy little debate, but you know what I mean. Humans interacting with each other over complicated ideas and philosophy and theory and envisioning better futures. We need that. That is essential for a thriving democracy and for a functioning government that is equitable by and for the people. But within that reality lies a truth that necessitates the strategic, pragmatic game of politics as well. And that is that there is never a scenario in politics, in building a government to run a society, where everyone is happy. There actually is never a scenario where even one person is perfectly happy and gets their way all the time. That would be a king. That's what's happening for Trump right now. But in a functioning democratic government, the act of politicking very much necessitates compromise, a coming together of people intent on forming a society together and willing to make sacrifices and be a little disappointed in order to form a government. And it is the literal job of a politician, if they're actually doing their job, to acknowledge those compromises and competing visions for the future and work with and across them all to actually get things done that are required to run a country. And the ideological purity and the strategic politicking both exist simultaneously. And the problem is that a lot of people conflate the two or expect both to happen simultaneously within the same person, within one politician. They expect to find in a politician the purity of their ideological vision reflected back to them. But that is not the job of a politician. The job of a politician in an ideal world is to represent, to the best of their ability in the context of the system, all the members of their constituency. For Zohran Mamdani, yes, this includes the members of the New York City Police Department and the Jews who are offended by the saying, globalize the Intifada, and the business owners who don't want to be taxed. He has to exist in the real world, not in political philosophy. And if you listen to him speak, I think he's acutely aware of this. The difference, and the thing that makes him such a breath of fresh air, even for people who don't live in New York and have no skin in the game, is that he genuinely seems interested in representing as much of New York as possible. He's not rolling over and capitulating to the class of people with the most money and power, to the 1%. In the face of pushback from rich business interests, he is standing by his promise to raise income taxes by 2% and corporate taxes from 7 to 11%. We'll see what his follow-through is like, but at least through the course of his campaign, he's sticking to it. His loyalties continue to lie with the constituents he is running to represent, which, at least given his popularity, appear to be New Yorkers who are increasingly concerned with the affordability crisis in that city and in this country, and interested in a politician who will actually do truly anything at all to represent their interests over corporate interests. And so what I hear in Mamdani is a man with very strong ideals who is also interested in hearing people and compromising where he can, while still pushing for policies that will resonate with the people it is his job to represent. For him, that has meant stepping back from his past calls for defunding the police, but continuing to promise a focus on creating a response system like we have here in Minneapolis, which has been successful, where there's a specific team that handles crises that do not require the full force of a militarized police force. There is no way to be an ideological purist and a politician at the same time, at least not an effective one. What I personally am looking for in a politician is someone who more often than not puts the needs of constituents above corporate interests. Because for far too long, this country has been run by the 1% to the detriment of the rest of us, which has undermined the ability of our government to respond to the true will of the people. We're being drowned out by billionaires. And you are completely within your right to be fucking pissed about all of this, about Mamdani's backing off defunding the police, about Graham Plattner's abhorrent past, about these politicians failing to live up to your highest expectations. expectations. And in fact, it is our job as constituents to be really loud and annoying about how they keep disappointing us. That is how movements happen. That's how ideas make it onto major political platforms. It happens slowly, but it does work. Some politician didn't just wake up one day and think, God, wouldn't it be cool if I wrote a law about workplace protections and banning child labor in an 8-hour workday? That idea came from the people. Some politician didn't wake up one day and think, wow, you know what? Let me write some civil rights laws to give Black people fairer voting rights. That idea came from the people. If there's one piece of legal wisdom I can impart on you today, it is that lawyers and lawmakers are not writing laws and bringing cases in a vacuum. It is a response to the larger conversation, distilled into laws and lawsuits, but based on the discourse at the time. And these big ideas came in some part from political and social philosophy, passed to people from academics and activists, developed in unions and expounded upon in the town square. And the movements pushing for these laws were messy. They involved protest, direct action. They involved boycotts and strikes. They involved violence. And after many tumultuous years, starts and stops, imperfect movement building, and lots of yelling and screaming, and yes, even violence and death, sometimes these things finally made their way up. So some politicians and lawyers could be like, wow, the people really seem to want this. Let me write this law. And so the two different parts that I'm pointing out to you today, philosophy and ideological purity on the one hand, and the strategic realities of day-to-day politicking on the other, work together to shape and mold and change our society. But I think it is a mistake to conflate the two and place those expectations on the back of a single politician and expect ideological purity or nothing. But it's a delicate balance. Like I said, open debate should be encouraged. Criticism should be encouraged. There's a reason why there is a high bar on politicians being able to sue people for defamation. The law is written to protect the open dialogue, even if someone gets their facts wrong in the process. That's how much we care about allowing for open debate and criticism, at least in theory, in the past in this country. And while the mainstream media and commentators like myself, who are not in Maine or New York and won't be voting, can pontificate all we want, it will be the people of those places, the potential constituents of Zohran Mamdani and Gram-Plattner, who will be engaging in these debates and who will have to decide whether this candidate actually represents their will as best as possible under the circumstances. And this includes really hard conversations about redemption and whether someone with a history like Gram-Plattner is fit to serve as a representative of a wide range of constituents, while also taking into consideration the real-world strategy of politics. Will he be able to effectively get things done? Will his challenger, Janet Mills, be better suited to beat Susan Collins, or will he? That is something only Mainers can decide, and it could very well be that the answer is that Gram-Plattner has to go. Or it could be that people think he can beat Susan Collins or believe him when he says he's changed, and they care more about the policies and ideology he represents than about what he's done in the past. I hope voters' decisions on Gram-Plattner or any other candidate takes ideology into consideration, but also takes the other point into consideration as well. The part where, by voting, you are participating in the everyday activities of doing politics, which necessarily requires compromise and strategy and an understanding that things don't work in an ideological bubble, and you have to acknowledge that you live in a society with other people who may not agree with you, and the politician you elect has to very directly contend with that every single day. And so even if you think the establishment or the system doesn't represent you, never has, you're absolutely sick of it and don't want to participate, I think that it's important to voice that and never shy away from those feelings, because they are valid. But I think it's important to interrogate whether you are expecting perfection in behavior and ideology from your politician, or whether you are also considering strategy and the everyday act of politicking in your consideration. Because theory doesn't exist in a bubble, and voting for a politician is just one way to engage with society building and civics at large. Because of this, I think it's also really important to keep in mind that politicians are never perfect. They are humans who are incapable of perfection, actually, ideological or otherwise, and they are but one mechanism for building a just society where people can thrive. They will almost always invariably disappoint you. Again, because of the aforementioned realities of day-to-day politicking, of the realities of having to compromise with people you don't agree with in order to go about the business of running a government. And so it is deeply misplaced to look to politicians as a source of hope, heroism, moral purity, or anything like that. That is not the point of a politician. It's really exciting when they do give you that hope and that excitement about the future. I'd be lying if I said I don't get a little teared up once in a while listening to Zohran Mamdani speak. I felt that way about Obama too, and then he failed to follow through on a lot of his campaign promises. But I was young and he was inspiring, and so I was frankly lulled into a sense of comfort because I placed way too much faith in a politician in a way that I took for granted that he would just be advocating for the will of the people and not for the will of big business or against immigrants or drone bombing other countries. The list goes on. The point is that even the most inspiring politicians in history were a fucking disappointment. And I don't say that to discourage you from participating or from voting or from criticizing any politician you want, Democrat, Republican, progressive, I don't care. I just say it because I think it's important to frame politicians as a tool for the people and not as individual saviors come to set us free. As David Dayen recently wrote for the American Prospect, quote, treating politics like sports fandom where you stand your team and rage against the others loses sight of how change is better made by building terrain and moving public opinion so politicians are forced to walk onto your side. We control the discourse, we do, not the politicians. From that same article, quote, polling now shows Americans opposing military aid to Israel and sympathizing more with the Palestinians. The numbers among Democrats are a whopping 54-13 in favor of Palestine. This is at all levels of the party, including older voters. So unfolding events moved the center of gravity on this issue and forced all factions of the Democratic Party to its side. But it didn't happen in a vacuum. For all the discomfort over college students protesting on campuses, it played a major role in pushing attention and changing minds. In other words, the issue led the politicians, not the other way around. College kids and activists don't have a super PAC, and in 2024, their few champions in Congress actually lost ground amid an onslaught of AIPAC cash. But none of that mattered when public sentiment changed. Those in power got out in front of the parade and pretended to be leading it. End quote. Not willingly, of course, not enthusiastically, but because we, the people, forced them to. And of course, it is far from a victory. Politicians are still largely in the palm of Israel's hand. There certainly hasn't been a revolution in favor of Palestine, but the discourse has changed around the issue, and the plight of the Palestinian people who've been living in an apartheid state for decades has never been more top of mind. That came from the people. And so my central message today is don't put politicians on pedestals. Don't assume they will save you. We save us. We push for change. We take ideology and issues we care about and we scream about it until they are forced to give a shit. They will not give a shit otherwise. And especially now that our democracy is overrun with corporate and billionaire interests, the hill I will die on is the importance of getting money out of politics and taxing billionaires out of existence. Everything would be better. Our democracy would be more responsive. We wouldn't have to scream quite so loud for quite so long if we weren't being drowned out by billionaires. And even in just the last few years that I've been screaming about this, I've noticed others have joined me in screaming too. And now we even have progressive politicians going on tours talking about it. And the state of our democracy and the No Kings protests and the recognition that Trump is completely corrupt and bought out by corporate interests, something a lot of us knew, but even some of his supporters are starting to recognize, is only helping to propel this issue. And I will probably spend the rest of my career in some way or another screaming about this issue because the fix will not come quickly or easily. And it will be only through our collective growing unrest over the issue that politicians will finally pay attention. And you may be wondering, like, Leeja, our country is literally a crumbling fascist regime. Why are you talking about voting as if our elections will mean anything going forward? To which I say, yeah, true. But as I've also said, and will continue to say, this will pass eventually. Fascism eats itself alive and burns itself out and causes a ton of damage along the way, but eventually it does end. And we will need to pick up the pieces and move forward somehow with whatever's left when it's done. And I can't come on here every day and just scream about the latest stupid shit Trump has done, though I will continue to also do that. Sometimes I'm in the mood to give more of a little pep talk. And maybe you hated this one or completely disagreed with me. And guess what? That's fine. This is my literal point. It is these very discussions that we have to be having, these open debates, these disagreements and arguments over who is fit to represent us, how we choose them, what hills we die on versus let go of, how we strategize while keeping our ideology intact. It is these very messy conversations that we have to be having and that the regime doesn't want us to be having. in order to build something better in the rubble of a country that frankly has never served a large swath of the population. So today I'm engaging in some optimistic nihilism, some messy discussion having, just for the hell of it. And Zohran Mamdani and Graham Plattner offer examples of the different futures we could build and provide us with the opportunity to have these difficult conversations about the path forward, which is a welcomed break, for me at least, from the panicked navel-gazing of the last 10 months. So by all means, tell me why I'm wrong in the comments. That's democracy at work. And if you'd like to support my work, consider joining here on YouTube by clicking the big join button, or supporting me over on Patreon, patreon.com/LeejaMiller, where you get access to all these episodes completely ad-free. Thank you to my multi-platinum patrons, Mark, Sarah Shelby, Art, David, Latranger Lucas, Thomas Johnson, and Tay. Your generosity makes this channel what it is, so thank you. And if you like this episode, you'll like the one from last week about whether Trump can run for a third term. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.